Okay, first up we have Vincent. All right, lots of great work in here. Um, real careful placement of the steps. You got the arm swinging. I can see that you made that correction at the end where you got the hands planted on it. As far as improvement, I think that the walk has this very slow, kind of pensive, almost kind of tired or maybe weak pace, because if you had normal kind of energy and strength, you would go up the stairs at a more quick and even pace. So I would say that someone who went up that slow was, sort of for one reason or another, struggling to get up the stairs. And because of that, if that's what you were going for, they would be holding on to the rails and using the rails to assist them if they were struggling or had low energy or those kinds of things. So I kind of think you need to take this one of two ways. Either if it's slow intentionally and like struggling to get up the stairs, then you need to really use the arms on the railings to help them get up. If that's not the case, you need to make it go up at a more even pace and not so kind of start and stop the way it is now. Because right now it's very hesitating, kind of stops on each step. Overall, I think the steps could be faster, and I think the movement up could be more fluid and even. I think find a way to loosen up the hands and the fingers. Don't make them perfectly still. They're kind of frozen, sort of kind of mannequin hands right now. And I think even if you're not doing this sort of struggling to get up the stairs, like some use of the railing, some contact with the railing would help, especially at that first step. Um, you know, would really help this. And yeah, getting some facial expressions in there, even just some blinks or just some facial stuff just to keep them alive. Some eye movements, some blinks, some kind of breathing, those kinds of things. So yeah, but really good work. Next up is Damien. Next up is Damien. So yeah, first of all, there's a lot of really good improvements here. I like the kind of looking at the hand before she gets up, and really like the bracing herself on the bed and seeing the bed indent from it after that. That's really good, and also, placing the hand here is helping, and yeah, this walking up has improved a lot. You got a pause there, although I think we'd like to see um, the pincers kind of open and close to grab this object. The eyes go a little funny there, but I'm not exactly sure what she's supposed to be looking at. In this area, the body is a bit too frozen. I mean, I can see you've got some hand movement and you've got some head movement, but the actual root is frozen, as is the spine, and you kind of want to keep usually at least a little bit of movement there, maybe a shift of weight from left to right, or even just taking a breath by doing some spine movement, just something to keep her more alive that, the head and hand doesn't necessarily do for you. And this fling, I think what needs to happen is she needs to anticipate the movement first. So she should rotate this back this way first, and then more quickly throw it, at something like that kind of speed to really get the momentum to be able to throw the object. Because right now the arm moves pretty slow, but the book or whatever it is kind of flies over there. And what this walk is missing is the some up and down movement. So it should be up. The root should be up a little higher while the legs are even with each other, like here, and a little lower when the legs are most spread out. So, higher, lower, higher, lower. But right now you can see it's super level, and that's part of what's making that walk look a little funny as it is. That's looking good. I like the pause and the tapping the thing. I think that the lifting of this heavy object right now isn't that believable. It could be better. And part of it is that when you're lifting something heavy, you usually want it as close to your center of gravity as possible and not out to the side. So I like this first movement here where she takes it and kind of tilts it towards her and then gets a grip on it. That's really good. I think what's a little less believable is that picking it up just because of the weight and the strain it would put on her shoulder, arm, and spine. Even if this, enhancement is super strong, I feel like, what you might want to do is kind of continue it that much further. Maybe she tilts it here and then maybe lifts it up enough that the bottom kind of swings in of its own weight and then lifts it up or something. But clearly you put some thought into that. And also I like the translating the root down once it's caught in the other hand. That gives it some weight as well. So that's really good. So loads of good work, lots of good improvements. Nice job. Next up is Cindy, and Cindy had trouble adjusting the speed. So let's just go directly in that. Let's just watch it in Maya. And make sure we have the right camera view first. Okay. And make sure the animation prefs are set to real time there. So yeah, you can see this is really fast. And if you want to slow it down evenly, the first thing to do is make sure you have all the animated things selected. And if you didn't have all the animated things selected, that's most likely why you might have had a problem. So I'm going to use the advanced skeleton thing to select all the controls on the character. And that seems to be working. They're highlighted and I can see the keyframes. While we're looking at these keyframes, it is a cause of concern that there's so many, almost one per frame it looks like. And if you watch the videos on the animation lessons, the idea was to keep it as sparse as possible and kind of just keyframe in whole poses, and then only, add the keyframes as necessary. So that's going to make things harder to edit and work with. The other things we need to select include the skateboard. So I'm just going to shift select the skateboard and the camera, because the camera is also animated. I just control clicked on that. And then let's give ourselves some room here. So I'm going to increase the length of the range slider to 500. Hold down shift and click and drag, and I can scale these keyframes out right in the timeline. There's a little triangle here I'll pull on and just extend that like so. And also when I'm done, I'm going to right mouse click and go to snap, and that'll put these two whole number keyframes because we don't want to work with fractional keyframes. Alright, let's look at that now. And so it's still fast, but it's slower than it was before, maybe half the speed. And of course, if you want it slower, then you could lengthen the range slider even more. I think the biggest thing to work on in this animation is the way the penguin is interacting with the skateboard. The skateboard seems right now to move of its own volition, like it's sort of motorized remote control or something. But I think what you would want is to see the penguin's foot touch the ground and push on the skateboard to move it around, to turn it, and these kinds of things. And I think that's where the animation would be interesting. Also, how does the skateboard stop? It comes in very, very fast and then suddenly stops. And so, again, the answer to how to do that is to look at video reference. Certainly, there's loads of skateboarding reference online. I'm sure you could find on YouTube, etc. And I would look at that. How does the skateboarder stop? How does the skateboarder turn? How does the skateboarder push themselves forward? And then mimic that with your penguin. So right now the animation looks sort of just like blocking, where it kind of move from this place, a few limbs kind of flap around, and then move from point B to point C. So I think I would try to kind of narrow down the scope a little bit. I think this is too long to try and accomplish, quality. We want quality over quantity. So try to pick a shorter sequence, maybe the, roll up and stop and then, talk to the other one or something like that. But right now it's a lot, and I think that it looks like we're mostly just at a blocking stage here. Next up is Sungjiang. All right, good work on this. I think what works well is that even though there isn't much movement, that you keep the character alive with some subtle, smaller movements, and that's good. Um, the ending could add a little bit more. It just kind of freezes there, and I think maybe you want to, keep it going at least for another second or so, just kind of to complete the motion, or watch it settle back down or something like that, because it seems like a very abrupt ending right now. And the other thing is to think about giving the character more to do. On the positive side, you've taken a situation where there's not much movement and kept the character, alive. But on the negative side, it's not doing anything. Give the character something to do. Perhaps the rabbit turns a page, or maybe kind of lifts the cover and looks at the back, or maybe a leaf lands on the cover and the rabbit brushes it off, or scratches his shoulder, or just something to do so that it's not so motionless. Maybe put some breaths in. It kind of looks like you have some breaths here, kind of the way those shoulders go up and down, which is good. Um, and some blinks would really add a lot, maybe like some nose twitches or other facial movements. So again, good subtle animation, but I would say kind of story and action wise, giving the character a little bit more to do would be an improvement. Next up is Alberto. Okay. So this is good. It's a complex animation, and there's a lot of good poses going on here, and clearly some attention to reference. First thing is, I think there could be some camera adjustments here. So the angle is generally okay, I think, except that I would tend to leave more room in front of the camera in front of the character rather than behind the character if they're heading in this direction. And then I don't like this shot. It's very flat. I think part of that's a lighting issue because we lose all detail here, but also it's just a camera angle thing, and maybe come around here to kind of a three-quarter angle view. And this one's okay just kind of for drama's sake. It's kind of interesting. A couple issues also are the feet are lifting much too high in those steps, and the feet aren't quite rolling right. They're kind of lifting off the ground okay, but they should be landing on the heel, but they're landing on the toe right now. Also, when the character turns, both feet are moving at the same time, if you see that. And one should stick while the other moves, and then vice versa. They should not both pivot at the same time. Finally, the other kind of I like this sort of jump up and leg swing there. That's kind of really nice looking. But there's this kind of jerky, bouncy thing, and I think a lot of that is just some of the timing is a little too quick in some spots. But also, we could take a look at the curves and see if we can fix that at all. So let's take a look at this in Maya. I tried opening this in Maya 2015, and I got errors. So I'm looking in 2017. So first here, this is an easy fix. Let's do two side by side and get the graph editor. Whoops. Sorry, I meant to get the graph editor. Okay. And oh yeah, it's just a Oh, did you animate the perspective camera? Or are we in the wrong camera right now? Or how did you do your cameras? Okay, I don't know. So let's take a look at this first. Also concerned with the Y translate here, so I think it's these first two steps. I'll just maybe take this one out. Move these down. Okay, yeah. And that's... And then the other thing is, I think you're not using the roll thing, it looks like. So what I would do is I would start, I mean, maybe start it here. I've got, do I have auto keyframe on? And then just over a couple frames, you know, zero that out. So you've got that, like it's finishing a step right there. And then, you know, don't let the leg pull it forward. You know, just keyframe it so it has a couple frames, or at least one frame, where it's flat. And then, you know, by here, we're rolling forward. I think I overdid this. And maybe let's kind of zoom in on this. Go back. I just maybe just want one little frame of that kind of up and down. Okay, and then again when it lands, this should be here. And I'm going to change a preference here. I'm going to change the key text to just the channel box. So what that does is now these red lines are only what I have currently clicked in the channel box. So if I take out some of these keyframes, it'll only be for the roll and not anything else, so I don't mess up something. So I can delete that. Hello. There we go. And that. It's not, the roll's not working perfectly, but see, I don't see any key ticks because none of these are selected, and then when I click on this one, now I do. You know, maybe by here this has been zeroed out, and then by the time it lands, it looks a little funny. Do you have some rotation going on also? That might be the problem. That rotate X. Oh, that's, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what's confusing is you're using the both at the same time. So let's zero that out. It's not doing that much, but I'm going to take out these guys. I just shift selected there. And there's still... I can see it. It's pulling beyond the leg here. The other thing you should be doing is you know, you can do a little motion on this thing to kind of see. Oh, that's a big lift of that foot. So I can move this down a bit. And here I can move it up some because that might get rid of, actually want to. So anyways, that gives you an idea, and do the same for the other foot. I'm not going to do it right now just because it'd be too time consuming. And then here, so again, let's look at this foot. It lands. Just gonna get a little bit more of this. See, you can't pivot both at the same time. So a good trick here is I'll click on, I've got this foot selected. I'll middle mouse click here, and what that does is change the time without changing the position, and then I'll hit S, and then it should stay still between those, although I'm going to have to add back in the finishing the roll thing. So that it goes flat, so it goes, and then let's just once again S there, middle mouse click and S there. So see how that that almost works like that right now. So this one sticks, that one moves, and then that one moves. Just want to make sure. I might speed this one up a little bit. Let's turn off that keyticks thing, because put on. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Keyticks active. Save. Okay. So I would sort of speed this up to get that from here to here. So shift click on that, move back a couple frames, and then keep it planted. So click here, middle mouse click here, S. Alright, so this lands, that goes, and then this goes. Yeah, and these are, yeah, and these, again, to keep these guys planted here, that one, although you need to kind of fix that foot position. You know, you'll want to take some time and get that right. I'm not sure what the deal with that is. Let's try. Maybe it's too low. I don't know what it's intersecting there. Or is it that the ground's at an angle? Oh, boy, you made that tricky. Yeah, so then that has to match the ground, huh? Oh, geez. So anyways, and then middle mouse click here, S, so that it sticks, and let's do that with the other one. Select here, middle mouse click here, S. Okay, so foot lands, moves. And then even here, between here and here, let's do both of these. I don't think you need that one. Let's click here, middle mouse click here, S. And then they take off, and then you don't want to let this stretch beyond here. You want to control that by animating the feet so that the legs are as bent or not bent as you want. And right now they're just stretching out straight because they're kind of overextended compared to the foot controls, and you don't want to sort of leave it up to that to determine the shape of that. So anyways, just a few tips on that. Oh, we were going to look at that weird up and down thing. Here's one. I'm pretty sure you just need to go through the keyframes on this. So up, down, up, down. I don't know if it was that one where it was looking really weird or not. Maybe you want to go for a view more like this instead of that dead straight on view you had. Yeah, it's like maybe something like this could be in here, but it's too big. So anywhere you see these sort of up down, maybe you have it's there, but it's just smaller. There's another little one. So if you want some little bounce in there. Am I at, oh, okay, no, I'm not at 24 frames a second. Okay. Still just kind of has a bit of a jerky movement to it, so I think it's like looking at some of the pacing of stuff and slowing certain things down. So yeah, take another pass at that at your pacing. All that said, there's a lot of good work, a lot of attention to reference, and a lot of thought in the poses. So it's good. It's nice work. Okay, next up is Brittany. Wow, so some very cool poses going on in here, and this is a really difficult animation to do actually as your first animation because there's a lot going on with skating, you know. I think considering all of that, this is quite good. Um, let's kind of slow it down a little bit. So this I'm having a little trouble with. You're not doing yourself any favors with this camera because you're essentially, from what I can tell, so the character is moving from screen right to screen left, and now let me cut, and still moving right to left, but somehow we're looking at the back and then suddenly we're looking at the front. I'm just that is that a continuation of the same moment? It's just confusing. I think the cut in this case, it's too extreme and it's hurting you a little bit. I think I'm struggling a little bit too with this change here. This speed change. There's just a very sudden change of speed and direction. Like it's almost like he stops and then starts going backwards there. That's a very cool pose. And I like the kind of turning, curling thing going on. Uh, so I think what you have here is some excellent poses, and I think you need to kind of work on the kind of the flow and the speed of the movement, and it's kind of thing you might want to do like animating along a path, maybe to get that right. Uh, which is it's funny because I've been saying don't animate the main control because that doesn't work for walking around, but this is the one case where it actually probably would work pretty well because the biggest problem you have with when you start animating the main control is the feet. You're never going to get them to stick to the ground. In this case, you never want the feet to stick to the ground because they're sliding the whole time, so that's not even an issue. Um, so I'm guessing you did animate the main control. So here we are in Maya. It's just kind of, yeah, that change of speed and direction there. This is much easier to watch in here. Got a great thing with the hand there. And that turn, I think some of this goes back to not having the right amount of room to work in. Let's look at this from the top because that might give us a hint on some of this stuff. I think this kind of clarifies some of the issues you're having right now because there's not this kind of smooth, even flow that you want. There's kind of this jerky, sort of sudden changes of speed and direction, which I don't think you would tend to see in ice skating. Um, yeah, so looking at that one turn, just as an example, um, and you did indeed do this one, which is good. That's fine. So let's look at that one. Look at how quickly it travels from here to here, and then suddenly slows down from there to there. What might be interesting to look at is what happens if we delete out this keyframe. Oh wow, it's still really... Maybe I'll take out a couple more. See, it still sort of slows down too much because there's just not... It's kind of the arc shape of the curve, you know? Just as a quick... if we draw a curve, and I'll start here. Can't see it right now. I'm even gonna go. I'm actually just gonna ignore the rank because yet one of the things I had said before is I think the rank is too small. And then what does it kind of spin at the end or something? You know, and you can take some time to edit that, but let's so let's I'm just kind of playing here, but let's edit delete by type channels to delete the animation off that, and let's you know, this is it's pretty much the timeline. So let's select the main control, select the curve, under animation, animate, motion paths, attach motion path options. Just use the time sliders, the length of time, and yeah, leave everything at default. And what? Translate is locked. Why is the Y translate locked? Well, I don't know. Let's unlock it. Strange. Okay, let's try again. And let's just, I might at least hide the bleachers. Let's just hide the okay, just enough to give us some orientation here. See how this looks now. I mean, to me, it's already better. You know, just with that quick kind of test version of that. And obviously, you'd have to tweak the curve and you know everything else, but you can also adjust the timing on it in the graph editor. So right now it's kind of slowing down at the end, but maybe you don't, you know, maybe you don't want it to slow down again. Maybe you want it to, you know, maybe start out slow and almost kind of speed up at the end, or at least not slow down. Anyways, there's something wrong with it. This looks wrong, but I think it's the shape of my curve. Yeah, better. Anyways, play with that. I think that's going to help a lot. Next up is Tommy. All right, so yeah, I mean, right now I would say this doesn't really address any of the issues I brought up in the first round. The feet are not contacting the ground; they are not sticking to the ground. The characters, you know, limbs don't move. The in a kind of any kind of natural way. With the chop, the arms aren't moving. I talked a lot about you know, moving the arms and not just the body to do the chop, and the camera's choices are changed, but not necessarily better. I'm not sure why it walks out, stops, and then walks out again. And then why you want to show so much walking if the plant's chopping wood. really, if you just did just a few chops at wood, that would be a great animation minus all the walking. But right now, though, chopping wood, it's there's really very little. It looks like there's just one or two controls on the character being used. So, yeah, I think that this has a long way to go. I would just pick one thing, like pick walking out of the building and do that right and make the feet contact the ground properly and stick, rather than just kind of sliding back and forth like they are, or focus on the chopping wood and do that really right and really kind of wind up with the axe and use the arms and really swing down with the arms and get the body involved. And whether it's one or the other, use some reference. But right now don't have any animation that's working very well at all. So I would kind of start over and just focus on one of those two things.